Did you spell your name Chris with a C?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Chris Graham. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Um,
The traditional way, I guess you would say.
yeah. I saw. Before I get into questions, I saw you're a mechanical engineer. You go somewhere in New England? Or?
So I'm not actually a mechanical engineer.
Okay.
I'm not a degreed engineer.
Okay.
I worked in the business basically my whole life, doing everything from janitorial up to running machines and designing
sweet.
stuff.
Sweet, dude.
And when it came time to go to college, business management was my obvious choice.
Oh, cool.
I knew I wanted to, run YHM someday. And so I
Cool.
went to UMass Amherst for business management and just was not challenged at all.
Okay.
I was big into math and science in high school,
Uh-huh.
and business math, I was just bored, is really what it came down to.
Okay.
So I transferred into the engineering program at Western New England University and kind of fell into the same hole there where I didn't feel like I was being challenged.
Okay.
And part of that was because I knew I wanted to do mechanical engineering because I knew I wanted to make gun parts and silencer parts and stuff for the company.
Yeah.
And, they want you to be a well-rounded engineer. So for the 2 years that I was there, I did structural and civil engineering and electrical engineering and all the stuff I knew I didn't want to do. And I literally just felt like I was wasting my time.
Yeah.
So it was the end of the first semester of 2005, I believe.
Yeah.
I called my dad up and I said, I know you've sunk a lot of money into this for me, but I'd like to go back to work.
Yeah, not for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I packed up and literally I went from school to SHOT Show. That was the first year I did SHOT Show.
That's so cool.
And jumped right back into the business and, in the designing role.
Cool. No, that's cool. That's really interesting. I was wondering about that. I know I work with a lot of engineers, obviously, because I'm one, but also I work with a lot of folks that are not engineers that do designs with us and things like that. And I'm always interested in the background about either why someone wanted to become an engineer or why they didn't decide to, and what they ended up doing, and if they're happy with their choice. And it sounds like you're doing your thing. And
it would definitely be nice to say that, yes, I'm a degreed engineer who's, interned and worked under somebody.
Sure.
And, it's nice to have that title. But, for what I do and the process to get there just wasn't right for me.
Yeah, I think it's a means to an end, really. Like your credentials really. I don't see them as much as a important resume type of thing. I see it more as like, well, what do you want to do, and what do you need to be able to do it? So that's cool.
Yeah, it was more about the skills than getting a degree.
Yeah, I understand. All right, so I have some questions. And might not get through them all, but I want to ask, when did you get into silencers and why? Like, not professionally, but like personally. Like, what was your first experience? Like, what do you?
So, my personal experience and my professional experience are the same.
Oh, that makes sense.
So in 2005, basically the year that I dropped out and went back to work, there was a Army bid going on for a new suppression system.
Okay.
And we were really well known at the time for our Phantom flash hider.
Yeah.
And part of the bid for this new suppression system was a quick disconnect flash hider that, the flash hider itself had to have certain capabilities. Mm-hmm. So a gentleman by the name of Mark White, who owned Sound Technologies in Alabama at the time.
Okay, I think I know Mark White, yeah.
He approached us and said, I've got this very good suppressor system, you've got a very good flash hider system, I'd like to work together to, make the two work. And that was the QD mount that we developed in 2005 that we still use today, the taper in front of the coarse threads with the ratcheting collar in the rear.
Yeah.
And so I spearheaded that design, took basically his suppressor and altered the rear of it to accept our QD flash hider, and
cool.
Went through all the trials and development stuff on that. And
okay.
What really kind of got suppressors off and running for the company is we approached Mark and said, because at the time he was making them literally one at a time in his garage.
Okay.
And we said, let's work an agreement here, some kind of royalty thing, and let's really mass produce these things, because that's what we're good at,
Yeah.
You're good at making one thing and saying, this is great. We're good at saying, let's make that one thing, we'll make 1,000 of them now.
Scale it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's what really got us into the suppressor business. And we used, and still use, his patented slant baffle design on some of our designs.
Some of the monocolors that you use have that slant baffle I've seen? Okay.
Yep. Obviously, some things we've gotten away from that as we've found more efficient baffle systems and things, but
right.
That's what opened the door for us.
Very cool, man. That's very interesting. I like that. um, someone saw a need. There's a contract solicitation, and the minds came together. And it's kind of how it is usually with the government contracting. It's like,
Right.
Get on a team. Someone does one thing, another one does another, and then usually you can spur some creativity later, which is cool.
Yep.
What types of materials have you used in silencer construction? Like I know, I know your new can. We can talk about later. It's 17.4, and you got it's tubeless, but you have the Inconel blast baffle, which is cool because put on short barrel 5.56 stuff like that.
Yep.
Are there any materials that you've chosen for a specific reason? Anything out of the ordinary, or like?
So, materials is actually kind of, I wouldn't say a sticking point, but a point of discussion internally within the company. So the first 5.56 suppressor that we did was complete chromoly steel.
Yeah.
There was no stainless. It wasn't 17.4, any exotic alloy. And my father was totally in control of the company at the time, and he really resisted the change to stainless, which was our Phantom M2 model when we switched to stainless, because on paper the chromoly steel actually has higher tensile and yield strength. So for a pressurized environment, it's actually a lot better. But you give up the corrosion resistance that you get with going to stainless. So most people aren't going to use their cans enough where they're going to rust them out, to be perfectly honest.
Right.
So for the majority of people, a standard chromoly steel, which is less expensive, as a material and it's easier to machine,
is
a better choice. It results in a stronger suppressor.
A little bit softer to machine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's way more weldable.
Definitely more weldable.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where the industry demands stainless because everybody's doing stainless, and
that's right.
Just to keep up with the Joneses, you kind of have to make that move.
Yeah. Are there any along the same lines? Are there any materials you find yourself using? I don't know, because customers or the market's demanding it?
Not really.
Okay.
We've toyed with the idea of stellite and haspalloys and waspalloys and all kinds of
the maraging steels and
outrageous
the exotic stuff.
Jet engine alloys and things like that.
Yeah.
And yes, in this application, it's basically an indestructible alloy, but 99.99% of the people who buy suppressors are never ever going to need something like that. And we're not we did it just because we could kind of company.
Yeah.
We're very much, we did it because this makes sense, and we can put this out at a price point where people can actually purchase it.
Right, yeah, so the form is following the function, which, that makes sense.
Yeah, and we've found, because we've been, designing trial and error and testing suppressors for 15 years now, the shape and contours of the baffle seem to have a lot more to do with its erosion rate than the actual materials.
That's a very interesting observation, and it makes a lot of sense. When you look at the gas dynamics and the different eddies and the turbulence that's happening within the silencer, and the high pressure zones, the low pressure zones, things like that. It's not. I guess sometimes people, I feel like this is just my observation. Sometimes people look for a silver bullet, and they're like, "Oh man, this is made out of like whatever, and it's fine."
Yeah.
Well, while it may make them not have to worry about other stuff, it's not really the whole story.
Yeah, they probably could have gone a different route and still never had to have worried about it for their use.
Exactly.
Now, having said that, we use the Inconel as our blast baffle, and that's an excellent choice for that.
High temperature.
Yeah, basically, you're sandblasting the part at high temperatures is what you're doing. You've got unburnt powder coming out of the barrel. It's heated. And, that's a perfect application for the Inconel.
Exactly, yeah, like, an Inconel, a stellite, so, in industrial applications, that's why you use stellite.
Yeah.
It's sandblasted at high temperature, and it's like, was built for, right? So, along the same lines of the materials, like, I was going to ask you, with regard to casting and then grinding, or versus machining them, like, because with stellite, it's so hard, you probably can't machine it.
Yeah, it's really not machinable. You'd have
so, like, what's your experience with that? You pretty much machine everything? I mean, it's in your name. You can machine.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you cast anything or.
We actually do use some castings for the non-suppressor related product.
Okay.
Some of our muzzle brakes and gas blocks and things like that are from a casting.
Cool.
But usually that's in a mild steel, a 1018 or something like that.
Okay.
We've looked at doing casting both in stellite and in titanium on baffles, and we could still machine it less expensively, so it didn't make sense to go to a casting.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. I just thought I'd ask because like I always wonder, like when I look at gun parts, not only silencer parts but other parts, I'm like, wonder if anyone ever thought of casting this.
Yeah.
Instead of machining it, because I mean, obviously there's labor involved with machining, and you guys are set up like I was looking at the YouTube video of your new facility, and I was just like, because I mean, we have like in my facility that I run, I think we have one lathe.
Yeah.
Because we have a mill, an old mill, and we don't. If we need something machined, we send out to a machinist.
Right.
We're doing, I mean, the steel we're working with, we have 30-ton sections we're moving to do other things. So, when you look at the scale of like a machining operation like you have, and it's so big, it's just amazing to me. So
yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize about us is, yes, we make suppressors and guns, but
yeah,
we're machinists at heart.
Yeah.
So when we're designing those suppressors or firearm components, we're not just thinking about what we want it to do. We're thinking about how we're going to make it,
yeah,
and if our design features make sense from a machinability standpoint.
That's really cool. So I had a question on here about what type of tolerances you use for silencer manufacturing. I don't even know if that's an important question, but it might be because I was wondering. You're going to QC all your stuff. You guys are used to huge, large-scale operations for producing a bunch of batches of different parts.
Mm-hmm.
Not only silencers. So,
and
are you
lots of military contracts.
Exactly.
And things like that.
So, what are you doing? Like mic and everything? Like, do you have like a special QC department? Like,
yeah, we have a full QC department, and the operators at the machines, have a schedule that they check certain features and dimensions at throughout the run to make sure that everything's staying where it should be. More critical things have tighter checks more often.
So it's pretty much a standard manufacturing type tolerance checks and stuff. Like I just thought I'd ask because I know that someone doing Form 1 cans or someone starting in their garage, like you talk about Mark White doing that.
Yeah.
He's going to look at his run out and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. But you guys are so experienced with your tolerance checking, you must like have it down to like you probably licked it. So
Yeah.
everything's fine.
Well, it's funny you talk about that because when we first started doing suppressors, we test fired every single suppressor that left our facility.
Wow.
Every single one for probably the first 2 or 3 years. And I think in that time we had maybe one issue that arose, and it was an issue that we looked at it and went, this doesn't look right, but let's shoot it and see what happens. But other than that, thousands of cans that we shot with no issue, and we basically said, okay, obviously we've got our process under control now. We're just wasting ammo at this point.
Yeah, you have a big enough statistical sample where you're like, if there's a problem, we're going to take care of it afterwards.
We're going to find it before it gets to this
Yeah,
point.
Okay.
And now, we EDM the bore on most of our suppressors.
Oh, that's right.
And the mount in the EDM perfectly mimics the QD mount, so everything is totally concentric in there too. So
yeah, so that really takes another step out of like baffle strike fear or whatever.
Exactly, and then even after that step, every single one of those gets inspected for check for run out and bore size. So
cool. Okay. I was gonna ask with regard to like the gas flow, within the silencer and out of the silencer. Do you guys ever study that, or do you do analysis or anything, or do you just prototyping and like what are your thoughts on that, and what have you done?
We've done a combination of both.
Okay.
There are so many good design houses and engineering houses that you can send their models to, and they'll run the simulations and stuff that we tend to not do that in-house.
Okay.
We'll run a SolidWorks simulation to get kind of a rough idea of what we think is going to happen in our head is what actually going to happen.
Okay.
But that really doesn't have the power to simulate, expanding gases as well as a bullet that changes, the
position.
Yep. So we get kind of a rough idea from that. But most of it is just build it, test it.
Yeah, I understand that. I was thinking, I've talked to a lot of people in the industry, here and there about folks that want to model the event that's happening right before the bullet leaves the barrel, the so-called uncorking event, and it's very complicated.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, even the national labs can't quite get it right. So I think that a simplified modeling and then supplementing it with your prototyping, I guess just getting pretty much a starting point with the simplified models is probably what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
I felt like that was the case, but I just wanted to ask you.
Yeah, and I mean we've been doing this long enough now where we have a general idea of how things are going to perform. But an interesting aside from that is a couple years ago we came out with our Nitro 30 caliber suppressor.
Right.
That has, I think, 11 baffles to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the next development phase from that was our turbo, went into 5.56. And so we basically took that same 11 baffle suppressor and shortened it up and said, all right, it's 5.56 length, let's go test it. I think it had 10 or 9 baffles at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded terrible. It was like a complete swing and a miss. And I went to our R&D group and I said, well, take half the baffles out of it. And they looked at me crooked. They're like, why would we take baffles out if you're trying to make this quieter? And I kind of went to them and said, well, you guys just try it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And so they had a 5 baffle can and it was quieter. And I said, all right, take half of them out again, see what happens. And so we ended up with 3 baffles in our turbo suppressor. It sounded great. And so, you learn from time that for some reason the 308, the 30 cal cans seem to really like lots of baffles with a little bit of space between them. And the 5.56 just seems to like to have a little bit more room to breathe.
Yeah, I mean, it might be the pressure differential. It might be the gas velocity.
Yeah.
It might be.
Well, I think what a lot of it is too is that the rounds that people are shooting are designed for a 20-inch gun.
Right.
And nobody's shooting 20-inch barrels. So even on a 16, what's considered a full-length barrel, you've still got 25% unburnt powder coming out of that muzzle, and that's why it seems to like to have larger expansion chambers because it's still burning off at that point.
Yeah, and you have some kind of strange plasma stream or something that the physics are not the same, and so dealing with that, and that's something that you're not going to model right. And even if you spent all the money, I think, in time to model it, I just don't think you'd get ahead.
Yeah, I think we'd still be ahead of the curve if we had made 3 different designs and
exactly.
tested them.
Yeah, no, it's refreshing to hear you say that.
And you never really know until you build it and shoot it anyway. Even
correct.
if you run the simulations and it looks perfect, it might run out there and it might meter at 135 decibels, but it's such a high frequency tone that it sounds like 150 decibels.
That's right. Yeah, you look at the what are the Fletch-Munson curves of the equal loudness curves for humans, and high frequency, it's going to sound so much louder even though it's not. So along those lines, have you ever experimented with different bore apertures and changing it down the length, like longitudinally?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So every one of our suppressors actually, just as basically a margin of error or safety margin, the bore gets larger as it gets further away from the muzzle of the firearm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. On the EDM'd ones, basically we just EDM a cone shape in there, with that electronic wire. And on the monocore ones, each baffle steps up.
Do you use like a set, like let's say for the baffles that are like super close to like the blast chamber, do you use like a rule of thumb for your clearance around the bore, or like is it a percentage of the diameter, or is it like a set clearance number? Or
it's more of a percentage.
Okay.
For example, on 223, we're usually running about a 250 bore on the first baffle.
Okay.
And then on 308, we're about 350.
Oh, okay.
Cool. So we do step it up a little bit just so that percentage-wise the margin of error is
okay. You kind of keep it similar.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. So how do you test your silencers? I mean, I guess I'll list all the stuff that I thought about.
Yeah.
I thought about durability. I thought about structural integrity. I thought about sound.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about on-off cycles with the mount, and I thought about repeatability and accuracy.
Yeah.
So like all those things, is that like what's your process?
It sort of depends on what market we're looking to hit with the suppressor. It's like they say in cars, light, fast, and cheap, you can pick 2.
Right.
Sort of the same thing with suppressors, you can have, quiet, light, and short, pick 2.
Yeah.
And usually, not even those 2 are in any kind of combination. So if we're going after, like with the turbo, we developed that with a budget in mind. We had certain goals that we wanted to hit. It's got to be hearing safe, preferably below 135.
Yeah.
And it's got to come in with the mount sub $500. So the first thing we test for is sound, because that's the easiest metric to measure. You can test that in, a few boxes of ammo and get a good base.
And how do you do your sound? Do you use like one of those B&Ks or?
Yeah, we have not the B&K, the other one.
I'm trying to remember which. Is it like you have a DAC system that you're using, or is it a?
It's well, the 2 like military approved one for the mil-spec testing are the B&K and the other one that I can't remember.
Well, I can't
Ours
remember
is
either.
the more digital looking one. It doesn't have the needle on it.
Oh, I understand
like
what you're saying.
that
Okay.
one. But it's got the specified rise time and everything on it.
Okay.
We use that for our official testing, and then we also have a digital microphone setup. It doesn't have the 20 millisecond rise time. It's got a 30 millisecond rise time, so that's usually our baseline. And then when we get something that's good on that, we take the analog meter out and do the official testing.
Okay. Okay. I understand. Yeah. Oh yeah. The microsecond rise time for those meters is so important for gunshot measurement, and it's a whole thing. It's just the whole thing. But I have some ideas with regard to that, but that's a whole nother conversation.
So typically, like, we start with sound testing, and if it sounds good, the next thing we do is make sure it shoots good, shoots well, excuse me. So that, we make sure that if we have something that sounds great and you can't hit the broadside of a barn, it's going to lead to anybody.
Yeah.
And so, we have kind of a point of impact shift in mind, and obviously, a group size in mind that we're trying to, no pun intended, shoot for when we're out there testing. And if those things go well, then we start beating the can up. Typically what we start with is the SOCOM test, where you do 8 30-round magazines loaded up in the case of 5.56, and you do a full auto mag dump, and then 1 round every second. A full auto mag dump,
Cool.
1 round every second, and you just repeat that. Let the can cool to ambient, check it out, make sure that there's no stress fractures or imperfections in the welds, that we haven't had any baffle strikes.
Cool.
Check on the erosion at that point, and then run that whole test through 3 more times.
That's cool that there is, like, because people talk about the full auto rating and what that even means, and any kind of rating without a standard is kind of not a thing.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I mean, that's good information. I know not everyone has machine guns, obviously, but I feel like you can get a silencer pretty hot just with semi-auto. I mean, if you went and fired around every second and you kept doing that for like 6 mags, like, you're gonna get it. You might even get it. I postulate you might get it hotter than full auto.
1 round per second actually does heat the can up more than full auto, because full auto your 1 round is pushing a lot of that under powder and gas out the front. From the next round, whereas 1 round every second, it heat soaks into the can, and then you hit it again.
Yeah, you have more dwell time, and essentially your thermal inertia doesn't matter, then you're screwed.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, great. We already answered the other question I was going to have, and I think we're doing okay on time. I don't have that many more, because I really want to shoot your turbo. I'm like super excited about it. And you also, I was going to ask you about economy of scale and machining processes for your other products, and if it allows you to keep silencer costs down and stuff like that. And I think yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you if there's synergy between all the vectors of your product lines, and the answer is yes.
Yeah, we don't really have the silencer division and the division and the parts division.
Yeah.
We're a relatively small family-run business, so we're balancing it all.
You're pretty lean. I feel like you operate pretty efficiently. After I watched those videos last night, and I was like, these guys, like, they kind of have it down to it's kind of a very sweet coordinated ballet.
Yeah. Especially in the new facility. It's really strange still to have an actual workflow. Because before we were on an old mill building that was 4 levels tall, that was built in the 1840s.
Wow.
And then we had a separate location down the street that was a newer block building. And we didn't have machine cells where every machine runs the same job 24/7. We don't operate that way. So we might run, a lower receiver that starts in building 1, and then, the specialized machine that we run it on in building 2 that does it the best. So we got to move parts across the street, and then it comes back to the first building to get final inspected. And
cool.
There was a lot of back and forth and up and down, and to see things come into the new shop, do a nice counterclockwise circle and go out the back door. It's really rewarding to feel like, hey, not only do we have this new place, but things are better, things are operating better, and it's helping to keep costs down to our customers too.
Yeah, it's amazing how much extra space and the efficiency gained from it. I mean, it just comfortable workers that aren't pressured, like, just almost geometrically, it's weird. It just, like, makes productivity increase.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. It's like a feng shui maybe or something like that.
We spent a lot of time making the building that we bought a nice place to work.
Cool.
Because I don't want to go to work every day to someplace that's a greasy dungeon.
Yeah,
either,
man.
So.
No, for real. No, I'm with you on that one. Let's see. What is, I guess, I was gonna say there's a lot of people making silencers now. I mean, I couldn't believe it. When I got into silencers, probably, I want to say like 2005, 2006 is when I really got into them.
No.
And now,
Yeah, there were
it's there.
maybe half a dozen people in.
Yeah, there were.
And like that's pushing it.
You had like AWC and Gemtech and AAC. You know, you had SWR was starting out.
Yeah, SRT.
SRT. You know, just, and it was a small, close knit. It was almost like a hobbyist community with a bunch of dealers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, you have so many dang popular baffle design. I mean, you listed some of them, right? The patents on the the slant core, core the monocore baffles that are slanted, that different spacings. I've seen a lot of people use those in all kinds of calibers, pistol, the rifle. Do you guys pride yourself on anything in particular with what you've done with silencers now differently than like other folks?
What we've always been really proud of, whether it be suppressors, firearms, or whatever, is like I said, it kind of goes back to designing to manufacture to keep the cost low, and keeping other people out of it and marking it up. We got our start really with not our start, but we got our retail division start with handguards.
Yeah, exactly. The YHM famous freaking barrel nut stuff. Yeah, man.
We're talking early to mid '90s. The only other comparative handguard out there was $400 or $500 MSRP, and we looked at that and went, "That's crazy. We could make that."
It's an aluminum extrusion. You're cutting it. You're freaking anodizing it.
We could make that and sell it for $100.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what we did. And when we started getting into the silencer market, other industry members literally came up to us and said, "Why are you selling it for this price? You could be selling it for this." And our answer basically was, because we're not here to screw people over. We expect to make a certain amount, and if we can make it so that more people can afford it, the better. I'd rather make 5 nickels than 1 dime.
And and hearing it put that way, I think it's important. I mean, to me, it's important because, like I told you before we started talking here, I hadn't shot a YHM can before. When I heard about you guys starting to make cans, and a lot of people, especially on like the old silencer forums, like Silencer Talking, you were on that stuff back in the day, everyone talking shit all the time. And everyone's like, oh, that's budget stuff. And if you really want it, you need to go with X brand. And da-da-da. And it's
if you didn't pay $1,000 for your suppressor, you didn't buy the right one.
Yeah, and it's like, well, there's some of that in every industry. That's probably every product there is out there. People, Cadillac increases the cost of their car to compete with the Mercedes, and they didn't have to do it. It's weird stuff like that. So I really appreciate you talking about that, because I think it's important.
That's actually something that we struggled with for a while, is because of our price point, people view it as a budget can. So like it's less expensive than X can, so X can must be better for some reason. Otherwise, why would it be more expensive? And to try to break that stigma without just artificially inflating our price is something that we've always struggled with, to try to tell people that, yes, it may be 2/3 of the cost of a different suppressor, but you're not giving anything up.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I had some questions about your new one, but my last question, I wanted to know, what's your favorite silencer host, like personally?
Favorite silencer host? That's a good question. I guess it's kind of dependent on the round we're shooting.
Well, I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you 9mm, 45, and then a rifle, whatever caliber you want, and then a machine gun or submachine gun.
So 9mm, I've been really happy shooting the M&P Compact 9.
Okay, cool.
For some reason, that host just seems to be a really good fit for our Sidewinder suppressor.
Even with the shorter barrel.
It just sounds really good.
I wonder if the locked up time, just the geometry is different.
Yeah, if just something is just right, so like more gas is passing through the suppressor rather than blowing through the action or what. And we've measured it. There's a measurable difference.
So that's the M&P Compact.
Yeah.
My girlfriend carries a Shield, and I got her a threaded barrel for Christmas. I haven't put a silencer on it yet and I'm weeks. I'm just knowing. I think I'm gonna Baffle Strike because it's gonna unlock so damn quick.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's gonna I don't know, but M&P Compact. I'm gonna remember that because I want to try it. What about 45?
45, it's tough to beat a 1911.
Everyone tells me that.
If you're using, the average 1911, you are kind of stuck with the poor sight picture with a can on it.
Sure.
But if you've got something where you can swap the sights off, or honestly, I shoot with a suppressor so much, you really can just kind of sight down the top of the suppressor.
Yeah, you can do like a both eyes open, or even like a looking through it type of thing.
Yep.
Okay.
But it's just crazy that you can engage targets 50, 100 yards out, or 150 or 100 yards out, and it's hit them. With a 1911, most people go, "You're nuts," and then we used to set up clay pigeons at the bank at 50 yards and just pick them off, and most people would be like, "That's just not something that happens." Like,
that's cool.
We're not quick drawing and blasting through them, like some competition shooter, but
still have fun.
Yeah, and to hand someone the same gun and go, it's not me, try this. Like, the suppressor just makes it that much more accurate.
It's awesome.
And you've got a nice big frame, so you got something good to hang on to, and recoil is really nice on it. So
cool. That's cool. I don't even have 1911. I have a FNX 45 tactical. It's a big crazy military handgun, and it sounds great.
Yeah,
the silencer.
The Mark 23 is in real tight contention with me.
Those are cool.
It's just so big, and it's designed to be suppressed too. Which
it is.
It just shoots really nice, and it's so big and heavy. There's no recoil at all to it.
Yeah, the action. I guess the action dynamics. The locking system is just perfect for suppressed use.
Yeah.
HK. They knew what they were doing.
Yep.
That's cool. Okay, so like rifle. It doesn't matter what caliber. What semi-auto rifle do you like?
The 1022 is pretty tough to beat. A 1022 with a suppressor on it, or like an integral suppressor, it just puts a smile on every grown man's face that I've handed it to.
Well, what about rifle caliber?
Or like a real rifle caliber?
Yeah.
I'm kind of partial to the AR because I'm around them all the time.
What do you like? Like a 14-inch, 10-inch, 16-inch?
I usually go full 16.
16. Okay.
Yeah. If I'm going to shoot it, it's because I want it to be quiet.
Yeah. It's hard to make a 10.5-inch AR quiet.
Yeah, you can make it quieter.
But you probably don't want to take your ears off.
Yeah. But I absolutely love to shoot subsonic 308. It's just there's no way to describe it. You have to experience it.
It is cool.
It sounds like someone blew a spitball through a steel tube, and then a few seconds later you hear steel impact of the round.
You're talking about with a bolt action then.
Yeah.
I was gonna say semi-auto with 308 subsonic. I don't even know how. Well,
you
might be able to cycle it, but I don't know how. You probably really like bolt carrier or something crazy.
Yeah, or an extremely adjustable gas block.
Yeah. And what about the happy switch guns, like the machine gun or submachine guns?
So we've threaded some really weird guns to play with suppressors. The RPK was pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
That was a lot of fun. The Papa Shaw was a lot of fun too, just because who's seen one of those with a suppressor on it?
Nobody.
But if I had to pick one, I'm tempted to say the MP5 just because it's like a typewriter. It just rattles off rounds. It runs perfect and it sounds awesome.
Yeah, it does have a nice cyclic rate, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I'm gonna have to go with the M3 grease gun.
Oh yeah.
We threaded up one of those, and just the slow cycle rate on 45.
It's 500 rounds per minute or less?
It's probably less.
It's like 400 or something.
It's stupid slow. It sounds amazing because the round is so slow, and it's just like tack, 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 tack.
Sweet.
Yeah.
You know what? I have shot one of those suppressed. There's a range in San Antonio that had one for rental a long time ago, and I shot it, and I just sat there, and I was like, "This is the coolest thing ever."
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, cool. No, I always like. I just really wanted to know that. When I think of like a silencer manufacturer or a gun accessory manufacturer, and like you have all these guns that you have access to, and like all these silencers, like, well,
you got a room full of guns. You must have favorites.
You might have, you can't shoot everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so the stuff, the Turbo 556K, I was reading about it, and I looked at pictures and stuff. There's one sitting right there. I guess I could.
You got a couple of them there,
Here. Yeah, this is the one where this is okay. So it's a tubeless silencer. So you've got your blast baffle assembly and your tubes, and then you're welding them together with your robot welders. So this is pretty sweet. You're going to EDM it, and then on the inside, your blast baffle's Inconel, because you like we talked about with the sandblasting, and then the rest of it's 17.4. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
The female end where the mount goes, is that the standard? Is it like 1.5 by? Was it a 24 TPI?
It's inch and 3/8 by 24.
Ah, inch and 3/8.
Yeah, it's
okay.
It's kind of become an unofficial standard.
The Omega, it was the Omega the first one? I don't know, maybe.
Omega, Saker, yeah.
Saker, yeah, okay. So the old SWR pitch, and
Yep.
that's what they used. So cool. Now you can, I guess everyone can use their favorite flavor of the day.
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
But you know what? Honestly, dude, I was looking at your mount last night, and with all the shit talking that's going on now in the industry, I won't name names, with tapers and their positions and blah blah. You guys have been doing this for like the whole time. I mean, your taper's in the right place.
When people started talking about taper mounts being the new thing, and I was like, that's the new thing. Like, that's how we designed ours to work from the beginning.
From the beginning. And I even when you let it click on, and then even if it doesn't index on the tooth, you can just pick it up and it'll still be secured.
Yeah, the teeth on there are a secondary locking mechanism. That taper locks together and it locks it up. I mean, that's how machine tools and stuff work, that we make these parts with.
So what's your favorite feature of this new silencer? Like, what do you like about it?
Definitely the modularity. I think that's something we're going to see a lot more of. We've already been experimenting in other calibers and stuff too.
Okay. And by modularity, you mean the mount?
The mounting system. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, because right now, for the most part, you're married to one company when you buy into their mounts.
You're right. I mean, I have a bunch of rugged cans.
Yeah.
My machine guns are pending, and I knew I needed to use them, and I know Henry from back in the day, and I was like, you know what? I like to look at their cans. They have some good performing stuff, and I was like, I want to buy some of those. Well, now I have all these rugged mounts.
Yeah, if you've got 6 to 8 mounts, and we come out with a new suppressor that blows everybody away.
Yeah, I can't use your stuff unless I want to change out my barrel. I hate doing that, man.
Right, and then you're talking, $80 to $90 per mount. And you're almost at the cost of the suppressor at that point. So
that's correct.
I think for the industry as a whole that this is going to be a good shift.
I concur. I concur. I talked to Mike Pappas from Dead Air about that too. He's a funny guy. We were talking at SHOT Show, and he was like, "Dude, it's like freaking when your Ford truck gets old, and then you're looking and all the freaking parts are wrong, and you don't know. You don't want to. The company's out of business. You want a new mount. What are you going to do?" Not that you guys are going out of business. You guys will probably be here long after everyone else is gone, if history shows anything. But so when you guys set out to develop a K silencer, at least in this 556, was this response to market demand, or did you see a real gap in your product line?
It was a little bit of both.
Okay.
K cans have been getting increasingly popular, and we basically looked at our turbo and said, this thing performs great, let's take a baffle out of it and see what it does. And hey, I think we're onto something here. Let's make the back half of it modular and see if we can come up with a system there that we like. And yeah, we did. We're happy. So we've got our Phantom QD adapter that comes with the QD brake.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I read, I computed it. I saw the weights, and it said it was like, I computed it to be 13.3% lighter.
Yeah.
And am I doing this right? I think this is 30 correctly. Yes.
There you go.
Good. I didn't want to cross there. So is that with the QD mount? The weight? Okay.
So all the specs that we list online are including whatever adapter.
Whatever adapter. Okay. And I'm holding both of them here, and the K is definitely lighter. I mean, it's smaller. I don't recall the at muzzle decibel rating, or the 1 meter to the left, or whatever you listed.
Yeah.
How much are we giving up in sound suppression?
From the full size turbo to the K version, you're giving up 2 to 4 decibels depending on the host and the load.
Which actually isn't crazy different.
No, honestly. Not really. We're talking 134 to 136 on your average 16-inch gun.
Yeah.
138 to 140 on a 10.5-inch barrel.
I mean, and I kind of tell folks, at least this is my experience too, if you're going to be running a 10.5-inch AR, and when I say 10.5-inch, I mean 5.56 AR.
Yeah.
You're going to be running hearing protection anyway.
Yeah.
So you probably just want the shortest can that's not going to blow like stuff next to you away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I'm excited to shoot it.
Yeah, even at that 140 mark on a 14 or on a 10.5 inch gun, most people who are utilizing those firearms are either doing it for fun at the range and they're going to, have Ear Pro available, or they're in law enforcement, and if they fire off, a few rounds, that's going to be the end of it, and then it's going to go back on the shelf. So,
right,
for that, low volume of fire, it's probably not going to affect you too bad.
I mean, for a carbine course, for example, you're running a short barrel 5.56, and your buddies might not be. You're going to have ears on anyway, too.
Right.
From your gun and their guns, why not run a K-Can?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's lighter, more maneuverable,
yep.
I suppose.
And you're still going to be reducing recoil and increasing your group, or increasing accuracy, decreasing your group size. So.
Yeah, it's kind of like a good weight on the end of your barrel to keep things kind of settled.
Yeah.
So I guess, how do you weigh product demand and research in the market and new ideas? Like, you have people coming up to you and say, "Oh, we want to do this now," or is that like I don't know, where are the ideas coming from? Do you have a director of product development?
So not really. Basically, my brother and I and our R&D engineer are basically our product development team. So some of it is personal preference of what we see is missing from our lineup, or what we think is going to be the next big thing.
Uh-huh.
And then some of it is customer demand. People say, "Hey, I think you should have this," and it makes sense to us, and we see that there's an actual demand for that, because there's always one person going, "Hey, you need to make this, and I'll buy one," and we're not in the business of making one.
Right.
When you got 500 of them sold, come talk to me.
That's a good point.
So we try to balance our own personal preference with market demand, because there's things that we think are great that the market as a whole just has looked at and go, "No, I don't think so."
That's good. That's good information. Okay, last question, so we can shoot, because I know that we're getting looks. What is your favorite silencer that you guys don't make?
The favorite silencer that we don't make? To be perfectly honest, we don't have a very large library of other manufacturers' silencers.
Yeah.
We've got really only half a dozen or so different manufacturers.
Okay.
Just for comparison's sake, every once in a while. But, we're not buying them all the time and cutting them apart and finding out how they tick.
Sure.
Feature-wise, I really like the Radiant.
Yeah.
I think kind of having the K-Can and the full-size can in one package is a great step in the right direction.
I just bought one of those.
Yeah.
Well, I told you I had the rugged mounts, and I like my surge in the short configuration.
Yep.
And that's what the Radiant is. Anyone it's full, and it's lighter, so I'm gonna hunt with it.
Yep.
Stuff like that. Okay, dude, thank you so much. This was awesome. I hope that these questions weren't too, I don't know, rote or like old hat.
No, it was great. Actually, a lot of
okay.
questions that people haven't asked me before, which is good. I do get sick of saying the same thing over and over again sometimes.
All right. Well, all right. We're gonna go shoot now. All right. Cool. Thank you.